Welcome to the Human 2 podcast, the podcast that investigates how we stay human and true to ourselves during challenging times in our professional lives, with a focus on the accountancy and finance profession. After all, accountants are human too. I'm Hannah, I'm the founder of Accountancy Hub and director of Human 2 Limited. I'm also an inclusion consultant and an ICAW chartered accountant. Today I had the pleasure of talking to Tom Clendon, ACCA SBR online lecturer and podcast host. He has his own podcast, which you can find on Spotify and all the usual platforms. He's had a really varied career, starting out at the civil service, then moving to KPMG. At one point, he was director of tutors at Kaplan, and he's taught the exam SBR across Southeast Asia, including Singapore, Vietnam, Hong Kong, Cambodia, and Malaysia. I hope that even if you know Tom, this podcast gives you a few little surprises that you didn't already know about him. We discuss his dyslexia diagnosis, the secret to a successful marriage. He's been married for over 40 years, which is very impressive. We talk about burnout and specific tips for passing ACCA exams, which I hope you'll find useful if you're a trainee currently going through that process. His love for teaching is palpable, and having seen some of the comments that his students send to him after they've passed SBR, his teaching seems to be doing wonders for people. So I really hope you enjoy this episode and getting to know a little bit more about Tom. Hi Tom, and welcome to the Human 2 podcast.
Hi Hannah, thank you for having me.
I'm really looking forward to getting to know you a little bit more today. I feel like you're very well known in the industry, so a lot of people might listen to this and think, oh, I'll want to find out a little bit more about Tom, and I hope that we can give them some surprises here. So just to start off, can you tell me a little bit about your early life?
Yeah, sure. I'm the fifth of six children, which if you push me, I can give you some sort of more detail on. I think it's vaguely relevant. I left school at 16, which meant that I didn't go down the university route. I got married at 22.
Wow.
We have 3 children. We have 2 grandchildren. So that's a little bit about my early life.
Amazing. Where did you grow up?
I am from St Albans, where I still live. So, born and bred in St Albans, in Hertfordshire, which is in the home counties.
What made you leave school at 16 and decide to not go to university?
My parents were very supportive of what we wanted to do. They weren't pushy parents, and I was probably a little bit headstrong. And my brother and my sister, other people in the family went to university. My dad had been to university. I just decided I didn't want to do it, and they weren't in the business of making me do it. So, yeah.
Amazing. Okay, well, now moving on to your career. So if you left school at 16, what did you do after that?
Well, I did do a BTEC, as in those things. I did go into further education at the local college. But I started work at 18, and as I say, I got married at 22, so I quickly realised that I wanted a professional qualification in order to have a career, in order to provide, in order to kind of catch up. And I was working at the civil service, and they gave me the opportunity to study ACCA. So, that was initially, I had a couple of years of day release, but the rest of the qualification was done in my own time, often at my own expense. So it took me about 4.5 years, 5 years to complete all of the examinations.
So you just sort of fell into the world of accountancy?
Yes, I did. I was a civil servant. I was dealing with, I was working for the Department of Trade and Industry. I was dealing with insolvency. So I dealt with the bankrupt, for example, of George Best. His file passed through our office. So it was an interesting job. It was a great job, and it involved some forensic work. So the civil service had a sort of a sponsorship to support you becoming part qualified. So I took advantage of that, and then having become part qualified, as I say, I was married young, and I knew I didn't have a degree behind me. So I took it upon myself to complete the ACCA qualification. And just before I did that, I went to work for KPMG. There was the Big Four also are involved in the insolvency industry. So I was able to migrate out of the civil service into the profession.
How did you find KPMG?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Wasn't quite me. Wasn't quite a fit. I had a lot of responsibility and autonomy in the civil service. I was young, but I was good. And I was preparing cases for court. And I found the processes within KPMG slightly frustrating. I think I was looked down on as a second-class citizen. I felt I had a chip on my shoulder because I was ACCA, not ICAW. I was reporting to a manager, and then the manager had to report to a partner, and I couldn't get direct access to the partner because I was, semi-senior. I was junior, so I didn't massively enjoy my time there. I think it's nice to have it on the CV. I'm glad that I scratched that itch. Mm-hmm. And one thing leads to another, but it wasn't. If I look back on the length of my career, it wasn't the pinnacle. It wasn't my dream.
Yeah, I mean, I've never worked at the Big Four, but I imagine that I would feel very similar, to be honest. So how long did you stay there before you moved on?
Just over a year. I mean, I got qualified, and I think when you get qualified, you often have a rush of blood to the head, and think maybe you're more important than perhaps ultimately your boss thinks you are. And I think I used that as an opportunity to do something different, and so that's when I went into teaching. A friend of mine, my study buddy, had been recruited to work for a tuition provider, and they needed someone, and they picked up the phone to me, and I found myself being a lecturer.
Amazing. So for those of you that don't know Tom, and as I said, I'm sure lots of people do, but you are an ACCA tutor for SBR.
That's correct. Yeah, I have taught all the professional qualifications, but and I have done it for a few decades now. Let's put it that way. But I have fallen into specialising, supporting my own qualification, which is ACCA, and teaching on the accounting streams. And the name of that final paper is Strategic Business Reporting, which is often abbreviated to SBR. That's the big debits and credits at the final qualifying accounting paper.
So is that one of the final exams?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And what has led you to specialise in SBR?
So when I started teaching, the vacancy that they had was in the accounts department, was teaching double entry bookkeeping. And so I had no idea what I wanted to teach. I had no idea if I could teach. That was the need of the business at the time, to teach accounting. So I fell into that stream. Now, subsequently, I've taught audit, and subsequently I've taught financial management, but I like the structure of financial reporting. I like the fact that it changes. I hats off to anyone who teaches tax. I mean, that just changes too much. and anyone who teaches financial management, it's a bit boring, really, because it just doesn't change. But for me personally, financial reporting does gradually change over time. There are new standards, sustainability issues come in. It does evolve. It does evolve at a slow enough pace that I can keep up with it.
I get the impression you really love your job. What do you love about it?
What I love about it? Is it a cliche to say I like helping people? Is it a cliche to say that it's about individuals who very often, ACCA was a second chance for me. Yeah. I mean, you could say I could have gone to university. I should have gone to university. I don't know where my life would have gone then. But ACCA has been fantastic for me. It's given me a varied career. I now run my own business. I've used ACCA to go and live and work abroad. And I've seen it change a lot of people's lives for the better. So I see it as So it's education, isn't it? What's the Nelson Mandela quote? It's an investment in yourself. It means that when I wake up in the morning, I'm not having to go to a spreadsheet straight away.
Well, that's all, isn't it? Yeah.
So that's why I like it. It's why I like it. It's a buzz. I haven't lost that buzz.
For anyone who might be listening to this and they're an ACCA trainee, can you give us a few tips for success in these exams?
I think resilience is a key one, because it's not uncommon for students to fail an exam on the journey to qualifying. So you have to be prepared to pick yourself up again. So resilience, keep your eyes on the prize, know what you're doing, and failure is a setback. It's not the end of the journey. It doesn't define you. I'm going to use another word, which is support. I think a lot of ACCA students are individuals. They're working in an environment where it's not necessarily a big training program, and they need to be good at upwardly managing and sideways managing their lives. So they need the support of their wife, their husband, their children, their parents, because sacrifices are going to be made for the future. They need the support of their co-workers, because the day before the exam, you want to be on leave, and you want someone else checking your emails or whatever. So there's about earning that support and paying forward at the quieter times, so that you build those relationships. So resilience, I think, is key. Getting support is key, and you can spin support into getting the right academic support, but I mean the family support, the emotional support, because it's tough. Kids have been to university, and that's tough. And actually, they're then doing a higher level qualification and holding down a job.
Yeah.
It's like, and maybe living away from home. It's like there's a lot going on. So support, I think, is important. I teach a lot of students online, and one of the things that I talk about there with them is routine, having habits. If you're going to run a marathon, if you're going to be slim for a wedding, if you want to lose a stone, these things don't happen overnight. You don't binge dieting, and you don't binge training, and you don't binge studying to pass an exam. So there's a structure, and that is a routine. People have a routine for the gym. They have a routine when they eat, and they should have a routine when they study. And so I think that's another generic tip for people, really. And if it's patronizing, if it's self-evident, fine. That's fine. It's true. It is true, isn't it, Anna?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think it took me a really long time to find a routine that suited me, because sometimes I would look around and see people starting extremely early in the morning, and I just know that I'm not that kind of person. I'm not a morning person. I just can't function in the morning. And so starting at 6:30 or 7 to study before work wasn't for me, but actually I'm a night owl and I can work into the evening, and that really suits me.
So it's about learning about yourself, isn't it? And there is a danger, which you alluded to there, which is comparing yourself to other people. I can remember traveling on the train back with a good friend of mine, and our kids were doing GCSEs at the same time. And I was saying how proud I was of my Charlie, because he worked really hard. And my friend was saying, Helen, she's not working hard enough. anyway, as we got off the train, we both then put some numbers to it, and they were both doing 2 hours a night. They were doing the same.
Yeah.
But by making the comparison, you can feel bad about yourself because you think someone else is working harder than you are. You have to own your own journey. Can I just? You asked me a question about tips for success in studying exams, and I'm bursting to say some more. Can I say
Yeah,
some
go.
I train people to pass exams. All right, it's a narrow thing because to be an accountant, it's more than just exams. There's the work experience. But my involvement is passing that examination. Now, I'm not teaching people to do open heart surgery, and I'm not teaching people to land an aeroplane. If I was, I would expect 100%. You know, pilots have to land that plane perfectly every time, and open heart surgeons really have the highest highs. We're looking to pass an accountancy exam. And so it's good for an employee sometimes to be a perfectionist. It's good for an employee sometimes to be a good proofreader. It's good for an employee to have that attention to detail. And I'm not saying that students need to be slapdash in their approach, but fundamentally, they need 50% to pass. And sometimes students lose sight of that and build up too much stress because they are perfectionists.
Yeah.
And we need to be good, but we don't need to be perfectionists. We need to kind of sometimes wind that stress level down so that we gain a context of what we're doing.
Definitely. I mean, I failed a few of my ACCA exams at the beginning, and so I was just trying to pass the exams. But I saw other people around me who were disappointed when they passed, but they got a mark just over the pass mark because for them that was a low score. You know, whereas at school or university they might have got in the 70s and 80s on exams, they were now getting 56 or something, and feeling like that was a failure and a huge disappointment. For me, I was like, you passed.
Yeah. No, for me also, pass is a pass. You know, I gain as much pleasure, if not more pleasure, when a student tells me they pass with 51%, as opposed to them passing with 71%. Because the student who gets 71% probably would have passed without my input. And a 51%, I really think, oh, I've added some value there. You know, I've made a difference there. But it's a realization that it's a pyramid, that you got into the sixth form, and then you got from the sixth form into university, and then you got from university, you got the training contract. And so, it's handling that pressure. And I go back to that word resilience. You know, I can remember studying with somebody, I can't remember her name now, but she really struggled. She really struggled because this was the first time she'd found anything in her life difficult. She'd passed a driving test first time. She knew how to ski. Everything had come to her easily. And so she'd gone up the ladder. And then it was at the step of doing accountancy exams was her Achilles heel. It was, you know, she ended up passing, but it was painful to watch her start smoking again during her revision phase.
Yeah. It's, as you say, it's just a tough period because you are often in a new role, maybe in a new part of the country or a new country in many circumstances. And there's a lot to contend with. It's not just the exams, but the exams are so important for progression in your job and almost like status.
Yes. Oh, yes. I mean, I love being an ACCA. I love being qualified. I haven't lost it. I've got my certificate up in my office. I'm not in my office now. Otherwise, I would reach down and show it to you. You know. It's nice. It's life changing, and providing you don't do anything naughty or silly, they can't take it away from you. I mean, I've come to realize, of course, about, you know, lifelong learning and CPD. And so you've achieved something, but you still have to keep it up to date. I mean, I now realize that, but at the time when I was qualified, it was like, I'm indestructible. You know, this is brilliant. But yeah, it's good.
So have you got any more general career advice you can give our listeners who maybe they've passed their exams and they're now just working their way up the corporate ladder, or maybe they're finished and they're just thinking, what am I going to do now?
Yes. Okay. I think people talk about job interviews, and that's the way you get a job. I think it's important to try and do the job that you're doing. I know this is going to be a strange piece of advice, but if you're asked to do a simple job, just do it well and be kind to the people around you, because in 10 years' time, 20 years' time, they may well be the person who is interviewing you, or the person who is interviewing you may know the people that you're working with. So I believe that ultimately cream rises. And in my slightly naive world, it is about being ethical. It is about being professional. And if you can embody those attitudes in your job, then people are going to notice that. And if they don't notice that, move on. You have a responsibility to manage your own career. And I feel a slight hypocrite saying that in a way, because I have been a little bit impulsive. I've said yes to opportunity when it's cropped up. So yeah, your work is an extended job interview. Gain the experience, say yes, be positive, and enjoy what you do. And if you're not enjoying it, then question. Some people like auditing, some people don't. Some people like tax, some people don't. Some people like spreadsheets, some people don't. You have to. There's so many things that an accounting can do that's not necessarily accounting.
Yeah.
Teaching, for example, is not arguably accounting. I know I'm teaching accounting, but there's lots of things that running businesses, lots of things to get involved in, because every organisation, whether it's the NHS, whether it's charity, whether it's government, employ accountants, because money's going through the business, money's going through the organisation, and there needs to be budgets and accountability. Yeah, and what's happening in the world at the moment? Environmental issues. Accountants are drawn into that because we've got to capture data, summarize data, make decisions and interpret. And whether that's to do with money or whether that's to do with climate change, those skills that we've got as accountants are really massively needed in a world where people want to measure and make decisions around sustainability. So I think it's an exciting time to be newly qualified. I think there's lots of opportunities out there.
Yeah, I've never been an accountant. I'm an accountant, but I've never been an accountant. So I started off in internal audit, then I moved into business consulting, and now, I'm an inclusion consultant and I've started a business. So I feel like a bit of a fraudulent accountant.
Yeah, I could say the same too. My accounting career when I was notionally an accountant and working for KPMG was investigating bankrupts, liquidating companies, and it was sometimes I was more of an officer of the court. I dealt with disqualifying directors, so I was more forensic rather than accounting. But don't we love that diversity?
Yeah, we love it. You can do anything with an accountancy qualification.
Yeah.
And, even if you do end up working in more the sort of the people side of things, like I've ended up doing, people still really value the fact you're an accountant and you understand the balance sheet and a P&L and, you know how companies work. So, it is brilliant, as you say. Can I mention dyslexia?
Yes, you can. You can.
When we
don't ask me to spell it.
I can't spell it either. No one can spell that.
That's a cruel trick. It's a cruel trick they played on everyone, didn't they?
Cool.
Mm.
When did you find out you were dyslexic?
About 10 years ago. Yeah.
Not at all.
Sorry?
Not long ago at all.
No. I was a fully grown adult. I was fully grown adult. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I had my son. One of my sons was struggling, and having had three boys, we were able to observe how the older two had progressed and the challenges they had had in education and in life. And our third son had different challenges, and we were able, therefore, to get him diagnosed and support. And it made me then realise that there was an element of hereditary nature, and that I thought he was fine because he was like me. And so I kind of ignored it for a while. But I was doing some stuff at the university, and I did get tested. And so yeah, I got a formal diagnosis. But I don't think I've really done that much with it, because I have developed my own strategies for dealing with it. And I have developed my own strategies for dealing with it. That almost sounds like a negative, isn't it? It is who I am. I can remember once saying to Henry, "What's it like being dyslexic?" And he goes, "That's a stupid question, Dad. I am who I am. I don't know anything else."
Yeah.
And I've used that and pretended to pass that off as my own. See. So yeah, I just realised some people find, doing some things easier than I do in terms of being organised. So some people who don't know me very well think I'm super organised. I'm not. I've put an enormous amount of effort in order to be organised, because it's so easy to drop the ball. Yeah, and it takes me sometimes a bit longer to learn things, and I think that's been an advantage in my teaching career, because when I do an exam question, when I think about an issue, I often get it wrong. I don't fully understand it first time. Things don't come that easy, and I then, with the benefit of hindsight, have used that as a superpower. Cliche, but I've used that in order to be relatable to the students, in order to, as I said earlier, getting a student who gets 51 is pride and joy, as much as getting a student who gets 71, if not more. So that gives me an element of empathy with the kids, in inverted commas. I've got some letters I can dish out if I need to.
Yeah. And how does your dyslexia manifest? Because mine is reading, working memory, and phonemic decoding efficiency, which I still don't really know what that means. But
it's another word I couldn't spell.
Yeah, oh gosh, no.
So my handwriting is appalling. I can't spell. I'm very disorganized. I'm a people person. So that's basically how it manifests itself. Processing. I think processing. I can read. And I do read for pleasure. But other people find that sort of thing easier, and that's okay. That's okay.
And you know what? When I was studying accountancy, I wish I'd had a neurodivergent teacher, because I felt like sometimes my tutors didn't understand. I mean, when I was diagnosed, I only had one exam left, but I then had a 5-hour exam rather than a 4-hour exam.
Yeah.
And there weren't really allowances for that extra hour. And, I was so much more exhausted than a lot of other people from doing 5-hour mocks constantly. And, I would tell the tutors, "Oh, what about those that have extra time? I've got 25% extra time." But it felt like it wasn't really on their agenda. Whereas I guess for you are aware that people have extra time, they have additional needs.
Yes, and that online is it's easier to accommodate that kind of thing, because it's a personalized learning journey. I mean, I didn't do well at school. It was, I went to a good school, but it wasn't good for me, if that makes sense. But whereas ACCA, when I was studying ACCA, there's a lot of emphasis on the individual to study. Although there's a teacher and although there's a book, you actually have to work at it, or I had to work at it. So I found a way of teaching myself. in my ACCA studies, and I found a way to pass exams. But that was largely self-taught.
Mm.
That was largely self-taught. So I've been, So when I came to teach, I was remembering the few teachers who had inspired me and try and replicate them. But I also remembered lots of teachers who taught badly, and I just made lots of vows never to be like, never to be patronising, or to try not to be patronising, and to try not to be authoritarian, and to try to be inclusive in a teaching approach. Because when you're standing up there and you're dealing with 30 people, someone's not having a good day.
Yeah.
Someone is not having a good day, and you don't know which one it is. Someone's had a bereavement. Someone's been bullied. Something has gone on because there's 30 people in the room. And it's like the smart person at the front, great, fantastic, but what about the quiet person at the back? It's great. I loved it. I do love it.
So the Human Too podcast is all about accountants being human too. And I talk to people about challenges they've faced in their lives and careers. Is there a time in your life where you've had to overcome a certain challenge, and tell me about it?
Yeah, so I have a positive attitude, and my philosophy is you say yes, and you say yes to opportunity. And I found myself when I was living out in Singapore, perhaps saying yes too often. So I was teaching in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia on Friday. I was then running a weekend course in Singapore on Saturday, Sunday. And then Monday, I was waking up in Hong Kong teaching another qualification, I just got burnt out. And so so I've learned that yes, and being positive is a good thing, but actually at some stage you do have to say no, you do have to look after yourself. And I think that's really, and I didn't learn that until I was like, I don't know, late 40s, early 50s. I'd gotten away with saying yes the whole time. I've gotten away with burning the candle at both ends. I've got a very supportive wife. I love my job. So why wouldn't you say yes? Why wouldn't you take that opportunity? Why wouldn't you do those things? But sometimes it comes at a cost. And so you do have to, that was a lesson I learned late in life. And, maybe some people can go through life and they never have to learn that lesson. And maybe some people learn it very early in life, that they have boundaries. I think that's the modern word, isn't it? Boundaries. You have a boundary. And you say, no, I'm not going to work at the weekend because, I have to walk the dog, I have to see my arm, I have to do that. I didn't have any boundaries for a long time. As an employee, I didn't have any boundaries. I would always say yes. And, that helped me get on, helped me enjoy things and do things. But
and what did burnout feel like for you? How did you know that you were starting to feel burnout?
Exhaustion, couldn't sleep, tearful. If I was teaching, I was fine because I was teaching, and then I'd just crawl into bed and be in the fetal position. So yeah, that's burnout. And a couple of weeks off, and reconnecting with my wife, and things get back on an even keel. But if you do take on too much, ultimately there's a price. And when you're younger, maybe you can be more machismo, or maybe you've got more stamina. And I'm not saying hard work isn't a good thing. I think it is a good thing, but you just sometimes have to be prepared to say no and change jobs, or take the consequences. You've got to look after yourself, because work will always be there. But relationships obviously matter, and health matters as well. So yeah.
And I think when you're early in your career, you're kind of move as fast as possible and, get that next promotion and impress everyone above you. And it can be exhausting. And actually, you can take your time a little bit more and just, as you say, put those boundaries in place.
Yeah, I don't think there's a set. I think these days there's less of a set path. I didn't have a particularly set path. I kind of meandered. I look back in terms of job titles, in terms of money and whatever. It wasn't my progression was not linear.
Yeah.
So yeah, Some people will just be smooth and carry on, and they're fine. Those lovely, perfect people. I'm very happy for them. I'm very happy for them. Others have slightly messy bursts, and that's fine. And you've just got to be aware that other people are in that situation as well. So when you're feeling up and good and positive, and you're enjoying this job, the person sitting next to you might not be. And if you're part of a team, you're only as strong as your weakest link. So if you've got a good manager, they're looking out for it. But I think a good team player, a good colleague, is also looking out, because if you look out for other people, they're going to look out for you. I certainly believe in sort of paying forward and trying to be positive about that.
Going off on a little bit of a tangent, so I am a solo entrepreneur most of the time, and I found that quite isolating at times.
Yeah.
And you are a tutor, and I assume you're at home teaching.
I'm a solo entrepreneur as well. I employ a couple of people to support me, but for the last 5 years, I have used the internet to create disintermediation, because ACCA, a lot of the students are self-financing, so they are able to choose how they get their tuition. And so, having been in the business for a while and having taken advantage of having been in the right place at the right time, I was able to establish an online business supporting students, mostly in the UK, but a few overseas, supporting students. So yes, so like you, I am effectively a solo entrepreneur. So I have to do my own accounts, which is a bit scary.
And how do you find that connection with others? Because I find it weird that I don't have colleagues anymore, and so I try and work at a co-working office quite a lot. I don't want to work from home all the time, and it's nice having colleagues. That's probably the thing that I miss the most.
Yeah, I actively network. I enjoy the contact with the students, but I also recognise that I need peer support. So luckily, I do have people that I've worked with in the industry who I respect, who I can quite hang out with, either virtually or literally. I'm up in London today. I've got some meetings later at ACCA head office, and we'll go out for a drink afterwards. And so this is a perfect day for me. Am I working? Doesn't feel like work. So yeah, it's a challenge, and I'm a lot older than you, and I don't mind at this stage of the game not commuting. I did a lot of commuting because I would normally teach in London, and then when I was living in Singapore, I would teach in Malaysia and Hong Kong and all over the shop. So I have done a lot of commuting. So at my age and stage, the idea of having an online, having the ability not to travel, I appreciate. So it swings and roundabouts. We don't live in a perfect world.
No. I feel like this year, I launched Accountancy Hub at the end of January, and so last Christmas I hadn't even launched the business.
Wow.
So I didn't really know anyone, and I was used to having big corporate Christmas parties, and I'm going to do a post about this later today. But I just took myself off to the National Portrait Gallery and had a really sort of boring but content Christmas party on my own. Had lunch, had a glass of wine. It was kind of nice and grown up, but a bit dull. And then this year, I feel a lot more in with the accounting community. And I've had parties left, right and centre. I met everyone at the first intuition party, and my co-working space had a lunch, and this year has been so fun.
Good. Yeah. I was just having a meeting before here with someone who works for me, and yeah, we were talking about the importance of it being a positive work, being a positive experience, work being fun. And I'm not sure I would have said that 20 years ago. I'm not sure that would have been part of the language. I worked at Kaplan for many years and did reviews there, and I'm I don't remember saying. And the priority here is about because you learn if it's a positive experience for the individual, that you're going to bring the best out of them. They're going to, you could be slightly cynical and say you're just employing someone, so the best way to exploit them is to make them happy in being exploited. But actually, I think that's cynical. I think there is a benefit rather than bully someone. I'm not always into carrots rather than sticks. Always into praise and this is how you do better, rather than pointing out the negatives. In a negative way. This is what you did well, and this is what you can do better. So yeah.
Okay, before I ask you to tell me what you'd say to your younger self, what does the future hold for Tom?
More of the same. I've had a fantastic year. I love what I do, and bring it on. Bring it on.
Amazing. Yes, Tom.
I'm very lucky. I know that.
I might have to be an ACCA tutor after this. It sounds great. And then finally, if you could go back in time and talk to your younger self, what would you say?
I don't know, because my younger self was pretty stubborn. I'm not sure my younger self would have really listened to what I would have said, because I was stubborn, and it was only getting married, it was only having an epiphany or a self-awareness that I had to take responsibility, that I then kind of motivated myself. But what have I said to my kids? Whether they've heard it or not, I don't know. It's don't be afraid of making mistakes. Yeah, don't be afraid of making mistakes. Keep learning. And one of the ways you learn is by making mistakes. So you kind of have to reflect and keep moving forward. Keep moving forward. Who would have thought that? Who would have thought I would have gone to Singapore? Who would have thought that I would have an online business? You've got to take. This is what is fantastic about accounting. It does present you with opportunities if you work hard, if you're qualified, if you get there. It's worth it. It's a great time. So I would say keep going. Well done. But I'm not sure my younger self would have listened.
It all works itself out in the end, whether you listen to anyone's advice or not, I feel like.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We have to take responsibility for our action. We have to take responsibility for our own careers these days. So, yeah, I think it's always important to listen.
You got married at 22. What's the secret to a successful marriage?
My wife.
Oh.
No, I don't know. A secret to marriage. Yeah, spending time together. We were lucky. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Working hard.
School? How did you meet?
Through school friends. Yeah. I went to a single-sex school, but I had 4 sisters, so I knew what a girl was. So we met. We met effectively as teenagers. Yeah, she, metaphorically the girl next door. So yeah, it's great. I mean, we're very different people. We've evolved together over the last 40 years, coming up to our 40th wedding anniversary. So we've been together 40 years. So you evolve, you learn. So yeah, that's great. It's good, positive. It's a blessing. I like the institution of marriage.
Tom, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today, and I hope that people that already know you listen to this and go, "Oh, I didn't know that about Tom. I didn't know that." Thank you so much for sharing all about your career and your life, and even some little marriage nuggets there at the end. So thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you for inviting me.